What we have here is a rebreather. This is one of many brands. This is an ex-CCR brand. It's manufactured by Q-Sub in Czechoslovakia. It's not necessary that one brand is better than the other. Every diver has their preferences, and this is the unit that I decided to go with. All rebreathers pretty much do the same thing. It allows the diver to basically recycle, if you will, some of the oxygen that is in the system, rather than wasting the gas, because when we breathe in a certain percentage of oxygen, and whatever our body metabolizes, it's not all of it, and it just, when you breathe out, it breathes out enough oxygen for a person or a unit like a rebreather to recycle some of that oxygen by sending it through a material called softener or scrubber. It scrubs out the CO2, and then it puts the refreshed oxygen, if you will, back into the breathing system. There are more technical terms for this, but for purposes of describing what we're using here, that's what it is. So these rebreathers use very little, smaller tanks rather than open circuit, traditional open circuit scuba that is usually much heavier and very wasteful, not very efficient. These rebreathers, in my opinion, actually shine in all types of diving, but most particularly in the deeper, beyond the recreational limit type of diving. Obviously, we use them at all depth, but when the person or a diver is pushing the recreational limits, these machines make it safer, because of your recycling gas. There's a lot of breathing gas that's available to the diver. So that's one part of the equipment that is used in the dives we're doing here over the Andrea Doria. Other parts of the kit involve, obviously, lights. You want to be able to see, and we don't just carry one light. We're going to carry a spare, because in the event of a failure, you still want to be able to light your way around, especially in waters that are generally darker than, for example, in the Caribbean. There's a myth that, I always get asked, well, can you see anything? Yes, you can see a lot. Visibility is usually enough for you to be able to see as far as your eye can see. But sometimes it's dark. Other parts of this kit involve bailouts, and bailout gases are basically open circuit gases that are not into the breathing loop unless you put them into the breathing loop with a connection. And what those are basically another safety net, if you will, another spare that you carry in case the rebreather fails. So if the rebreather fails, you plan for failures, and depending on how deep and how long one is diving, will dictate how much bailout gas one should carry. And the NOM or bailout is basically for that. If the rebreather fails, you're able to go to another breathing bottle and conduct whatever decompression is owed before you can safely surface. And you do that on now traditional open circuit through your bailout gases if that fails. Other things that we carry are a bag that has many things in it. It has, mine has a knife attached to it. Inside of it is a mesh bag. There are strobes that we use during these dives because it's dark. We attach a strobe to the anchor line, and we're able to basically see it from some distance away, whereas without a strobe you wouldn't be able to see it. There's spare lines in this bag, and other necessary tools to conduct these dives safely. In case the diver does not come back to the anchor line, is lost, or there's some sort of an emergency, or it's caught in current, we have an upline reel. And an upline reel is a reel that's wound with, depending on the depth, a line that will safely reach the surface. On the end of that line is a little balloon, if you will, that you put air in it on the bottom, and it takes it up to the surface, and you tie it. You're off your line on the bottom, and you can safely come up and conduct the stops on the upline reel without having to come up the anchor line that is usually fastened from the boat to the shipwreck. And then we have regular wreck reels. If the visibility is bad, you can tie this off near the anchor line, and you reel it out and you reel it back in so you can safely come back to the anchor line. The goal is to safely come back to the anchor line every time, but emergencies do happen. Other things that you may see on a dive kit, diving in the Northeast, are heat packs. You know, under the dry suit, obviously we wear dry suits. Under a dry suit is usually a heat vest that has a watertight connection, and a heat pack allows you to basically, you know, have that heat vest warm you up if you are cold. Some other, I guess, the motorcyclists use heat vests when they're riding in the cold, if you will. You know, wet notes, the ability to write some notes underwater, to communicate with somebody on the boat if you're closer to the boat, if you're doing a decompression, if there's an issue, or divers. I did mention the strobes before. Here's a strobe. I just turned it on, and you can see how, you know, obviously it's not very bright in daylight, but underwater in the dark, this is a beacon to bring you back closer to the anchor line if you are away from the anchor line. A mask, otherwise you won't be able to see anything. Spare balloons or lift bags, if you will, emergency signals. This is what we call a John line. A friend of ours, John Hulbert, named this piece of equipment in high current situations, like sometimes you can find yourself in Doria. Instead of having to hang on with your arm and get really tired, you can just attach this line to the anchor line or to your decompression station, and then attach the clip to one of your D-rings on your kit, and then you can be hands-free without having to strain yourself. Cameras are things that we take with us. You have anywhere from your little GoPro camera to something more involved, like this camera here, with video lights and fancy controls, if you will. And obviously, a very important component to diving these types of waters, or any type of water, you want your exposure protection, exposure to the elements, to the water temperature and to the water, to be adequate. In the Caribbean, you might dive with a pair of swim trunks. But here in the Northeast, you have to wear thick neoprene gloves, hood, and obviously a dry suit. Some people, you know, do wetsuit diving still in the Northeast, and it's usually later in the year when the water is warmer. But on the bottom here, typically, and 250 feet on the wreck, you know, for example, a couple of days ago, we experienced temperatures, you know, 49 degrees, 47 degrees, and that can be pretty cold if you're wearing a wetsuit. Although it's very, very possible, and people have done it. We prefer to use dry suits, and under dry suits we have undergarments. Obviously, sometimes, you know, dry suits leak, but generally they keep you warmer because you're able to wear fleece and other things underneath in the heating vest, just as I indicated before. The way a dry suit works is it's a membrane, a neoprene membrane or trilaminate type of membrane, which is lighter than neoprene. And then there's a vent valve usually, and there's an intake valve or an input valve of air. And as you descend, you add a little bit of air into the dry suit, so it keeps a positive pressure between your body and the water pressure that's pressing onto the dry suit, if you will. So that way you don't get a suit squeeze and you come out all black and blue marks. and that's what keeps you warm. Having a little bit of air in your dry suit um, is a good thing, and it helps make the dive more comfortable and obviously more efficient and more successful. This is very gear intensive, obviously, because we're diving in an area that is gotten cold temperatures and remote, if you will. We're quite a ways from safety. So, you know, self-sufficiency is the number one thing that we strive to achieve here. There are many other types of gear configurations. This is just mine, and obviously they're not all my ideas. Some of them are, some of them are not. You know, we have a good crew on this boat that we always, you know, kind of kick ideas around and try to configure our gear in the most efficient way possible. We're always changing things and making things better. So that's you know, that's that. There are areas where you're going to need more gear. For example, if you go to areas that are colder, you may use dry gloves. I don't use dry gloves. Some of the guys on the boat do. I use regular neoprene wet gloves. And there are other equipment that you may add to your kit as you go to different places or take equipment away. Another thing that we regularly use in the Northeast in these types of situations is a diver propulsion vehicle, which is aka a scooter. This machine has a battery in it, has a motor, propeller, and it just makes it easy to travel to and from the wreck and on the wreck in case there's a bit of current. So that's really about it, and I can go on and on and on, but I think that's a good basic description of what the gear is about.